morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Look at those waves pouring in. We have so much to cover this morning, and we're going to be talking with Kevin Sullivan about the upcoming Horseheads St. Patrick's Parade. So that's coming up in just a little bit. We have a lot of local issues, New York State issues. Of course, we can talk about what seemed inevitable. I still think the timeline is odd to me, which is Nikki Haley dropping out or suspending her campaign is a term they always use, which I think Marianne Williamson is the only one that I can recall that suspended the campaign and then actually came back. But the suspending is the word that they always use. So Nikki Haley dropping out of the race. We also have the State of the Union tonight, the takes on that, what people are expecting. I will say, I was talking to somebody about this yesterday. The bar is set high for expectations on Biden, but at the same time, the bar is set very low. So a low performance will still be awarded the best speech a president has ever given by the mainstream media. But also, the bar is set high because will it change the trajectory of his campaign? Very interesting. Lot to watch for tonight, so we'll talk about that. Before we get into New York State issues, I hope that you will bear with me for just a moment. I have to give you an update on something that I find so fascinating and that I've brought up probably too frequently on this program the last few weeks. But there's a method to my madness because, again, I think it highlights the importance of focusing on local elections, knowing who you're voting for, knowing why you're voting for them. And we've been talking about Super Mayor Tiffany Henyard. Recall, just probably the last 2 weeks, I've had 3 or 4 stories of Mayor Henyard who has spent lavishly, has kept that spending as secret as possible, meaning not opening the books. They got into somewhere around a $5 million deficit in her small town of Dolton, Illinois. She, with taxpayers' money, has been furnishing trips and things like that, but also posters around town with her face on it. Very dictatorial in nature, very reminiscent of some of the posters you'd see in a dictatorship. Well, self-described super mayor Tiffany Henyard is under some hot water. The FBI is looking into her allegedly because of this spending. And now the town of Dolton, the village of Dolton, wants some answers. So they passed a resolution unanimously asking to investigate her spending following allegations she misused taxpayer money on lavish trips and her own $1 million police detail. And remember, there were some questions about that police detail as if they were almost a strong-arm nature. If you recall, one business alleged that they were shut down because they did not make a donation to her charity. Well, guess what Super Mayor Henyard decided? She doesn't like that investigation, so she vetoed it. I find this story to be a movie in the making. The village board unanimously voted to open a probe into Henyard, calling on her to submit the village's financial records and inviting the FBI to conduct its own investigation. However, Henyard vetoed this on Monday, claiming the resolution was the result of a personal attack against her. Quote, "As you can see, our village, our community, myself, we are under attack. It's a shame that people can come to meetings and just tell one side of the stories and not get the entire side of both stories." Well, isn't that a part of opening the books? Maybe the other side will be exposed, but no. She claimed that the village board was a boys' club that doesn't want women like her leading, with Henyard vowing to fight back against the alleged smear campaign against her. "I'm going to always fight for what's right, and I always stay the course, and I'll be victorious when all the dust clears." She did admit during this meeting to a $2 million deficit, with Dolton owing more than $427,000 for street paving and another $400,000 for tree trimming services. Members of the village board, who vowed to override her veto during next month's meeting, claimed that the deficit was millions more than Henyard's estimates. All right, so why do I bring this up? Well, one trustee to the village said the mayor can blame everybody for what's going on, but she has to look at herself. Why do I bring this up? Because people voted her in. It was a close race, knowing very little about her, not doing the research, and now they have, for lack of a better term, buyer's remorse. So again, I'm just emphasizing the fact, always know who you're voting for and always get out and vote. And that's why on this program we've made it a goal to have as many candidates as possible. So if you are a candidate or you know someone that's a candidate, please reach out to that number on the bottom of the screen. Let me know. I'd love to have them on the program. When we come back, we're going to jump into New York State issues. We also have, obviously, Nikki Haley, State of the Union, the presidential race in general, some other different topics as well that we'll get to if we have an opportunity. But stay right there. We're just getting started. This is Frankly Speaking on Big Fox. Broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. This is Frankly Speaking on Big Fox. We have a lot of New York State issues to cover. First of all, let's start with this message from Congressman Nick Langworthy. He has secured $1.25 million in funding for our friends in Hornell at the Hornell Water Plant. I'm proud to secure $1.25 million for the Hornell Water Pollution Control Plant, a critical needed investment that will enable the city to address aging infrastructure, safeguard public health, and bolster economic growth in the region. This new funding will ensure that constituents in Hornell have continued access to clean water well into the future. I'm dedicated to continued collaboration with local officials to meet the needs of our community and deliver real results for the southern tier. We'll have other comments throughout the morning. We're going to hear from Assemblyman Phil Palmesano about CHIPS funding, something that we talk about so often on the program. We have a lot of local issues as well that I think you're going to find very interesting. We're going to jump around a little bit this morning and dive in and out of local and statewide politics. Before we go to Phil, I wanted to mention something that we just didn't have an opportunity to get to yesterday. And thank you to everybody that reached out and told me, how much they enjoy having Sheriff Allard on the program. I do too, so I appreciate those comments. And I didn't have a chance to mention this yesterday, but according to Siena College, they released the 17th annual Upstate New York Business Leaders Survey. So if you're a small business owner, this may resonate with you. 67% of upstate New York CEOs say business conditions are getting worse. 67% that the business conditions in upstate New York are getting worse, while 29% say they're staying about the same, and only 4% believe they are getting better. We tie that in, and this is not just to be negative on New York, it's just the surveys that we have here. Nearly 3,000, so each year the United States Department of Agriculture holds a census, or each 5 years, and the results from 2022 are really not only startling, but heartbreaking. Nearly 3,000 New York farms have closed in 5 years. According to the USDA census, in 2017, there were approximately 33,000 farms across New York State, 33,000. In 2022, it's now down to around 30,000. That's approximately 3,000 farms gone in just 5 years. Also, on a kind of oddball story, yes, I know I'm moving fast this morning. That's the kind of program we're going to have. According to the Daily Mail out of the United Kingdom, a quarter of U.S. adults want their state to secede. Texans, Californians, and New Yorkers are closest to the exit. Now, which state, though, is the most willing to secede from the Union? I found this interesting. Alaskans. 36% want the last frontier to call it a day and leave the Union. Here's a quick look. I know this is kind of an oddball story, but here is a quick look at the map. Because next up, Democrat-run California and New York are next in line. 29%. California, 28% of residents in New York are favoring secession. There you are. Some interesting stories there. Oh, one other very interesting story, which could probably tie in with that last comment. Andrew Cuomo is now facing a House subpoena over COVID deaths in nursing homes. I'm sure many of you are saying, finally. This has been an ongoing story, something that I think is just tragically been swept under the rug. When we talk about how reckless the governor was, that alone should have had him out of office. Of course, you tie the other things in with it, and it was, in my opinion, a no-brainer at that point. The Republican-led Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic accused Governor Cuomo, former Governor Cuomo, of recklessly exposing nursing home residents to the virus with deadly consequences. So we will keep a close eye on that. We got to take another short break, a couple local issues, and then when we return, we're going to jump. Actually, a couple local issues. Then we're going to talk with Kevin Sullivan about the Horseheads St. Patrick's Parade, and then we're going to dive into presidential politics. So don't go anywhere. We're just getting started. This is Frankly Speaking. Oh, and we'll be right back. A beautiful day here on Marcus Street in Corning. Thank you so much for joining us here on Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. A couple of quick local issues, and we're going to dive into national politics, and of course we're going to hear from Kevin Sullivan in just a little bit. So Assemblyman Phil Palmesano met with highway superintendents along with Senator Tom O'Mara and some other colleagues. Now, the Assemblyman said, quote, as I've always said, actually, I think I have it on the screen. As I've always said, local roads matter and are essential. The CHIPS program is vital to maintaining our local roads, bridges, and culverts. It was great to meet with our local highway superintendents who traveled up to Albany from the southern tier and Finger Lakes region to show their support for the CHIPS program and fight back against the governor's proposed cuts that would be devastating to local municipalities across New York State. And just to put this into a little perspective, we talk about CHIPS quite frequently, and I thought this would be an appropriate time to play a short video on CHIPS funding because it may be, not the sexiest topic in the world as we talk about the State of the Union tonight, as we talk about, the Nikki Haley dropping out and these type of things, the presidential race in general. But it is the kind of thing that affects your day-to-day life, safety-wise, but also just comfort and convenience-wise. So I thought this would be an appropriate time to play this quick video. Here we go.
Last year we came together and pushed for an increase in CHIPS funding for our local infrastructure because local roads matter.
It's amazing to see the turnout here. We've got over 400 town and county highway superintendents here.
Look at this. We're going to outgrow this space pretty soon, too, I think.
We have to make a commitment to local roads and bridges. It matters.
Local roads matter.
Local roads certainly matter.
It's important to remember that our local roads don't just matter. Our local roads are essential.
There we go. I thought that would put things into perspective. Thank you very much. Okay, let's. We've got a couple of viewer comments before we go to our break, and then we hear from Kevin Sullivan. Let me see if I've got this right. You know what? I'm going to actually, because I can't, it's quite a lengthy text. I want to make sure I have it all right and I don't butcher it. We'll read that when we come back from break. But how about this? Put real money into roads once so they last more than 5 years. Roads in Germany are built to last for 50 years. Well, thank you for those comments. We've got other comments coming in. One last thing before we go to break that I wanted to mention this morning that I'm excited about. You know, we've done a lot here on the program and in general on Big Fox about the Wine Glass Marathon. Big announcement coming out just yesterday. Here we are. Oh, for some reason, we've got an extra statement there. There we go. The Wine Glass Race Series announces a new kids run. So get your pen out. There's all the information you need to know. This is going to be a great event to get more people involved in the Wine Glass Marathon, which is such a huge boost to our area. As you see the times on your screen, Sheila Sutton, our friend here on the program, said, "We are excited to introduce the Wine Glass Kids Run as an extension of our commitment to promoting health and wellness within our community, and are grateful to our community partners who support our mission to encourage young minds to embrace an active lifestyle." Now think about this. You register, the first 50 kids to register, only $5. After the first 50, the entry fee is $10 until the event sells out. But get this. They all receive a t-shirt, a special prize, and a healthy snack provided by Wegmans. So there you are. Sign up. You see the website on the bottom of your screen. When we come back, Kevin Sullivan will be our guest, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We're broadcasting from the Heselson studio, and joining me in that studio is Kevin Sullivan. Thanks so much for being on the program.
Great, thanks for having me.
Of course. Now, we're going to talk about the Horseheads St. Patrick's Day Parade. Is it St. Patrick's Parade?
Yeah.
Because it's actually this Saturday.
Correct.
Are you
yes.
ready?
I hope so.
You have no choice by now,
I have
right?
no choice. Not at all. Not at all. So, yeah, this Saturday, March 9th.
Now, well, let's start right with the who, what, when, where, and why. What time?
Yeah, good question. We form at 1 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
And this year's going to be a little bit different. We're getting back to the Horseheads High School.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to form the parade at Horseheads High School. Parade starts at 2. It's going to be a little shorter this year. We're going to start basically on the corner of Center and Fletcher, go straight down to Main Street, take a left onto Main Street, and basically disperse at the Horseheads Fire Department.
So would you recommend people that want to attend that they should arrive probably around 1 to get settled in?
I would.
Yeah.
I would, to be honest with you. But yeah, anywhere along the parade route, Fletcher Street, Main Street, and obviously Hanover Square is going to be pretty crowded, if you will.
Of course.
And that's where the announcements are going to be done. Our stage is going to be done, so on and so forth.
If you had to put an estimate on it, how many participants are there?
Roughly 500 right now in the parade.
Wow.
So there's, depending upon the weather and everybody's interest and everything, there could be a good 1,000 people or so.
Well, and you mentioned people's interest. This really has become a staple in the community. We hear about it. What is the 19th annual?
To my calculations, about 21.
21. Okay,
yeah.
so the record books. There's some discrepancies.
Those years were thrown out.
Okay.
The last couple of years.
Yeah, fair enough. But it has become, like I said, a staple in the community. Why do you think that is?
It's just something to do in March.
Yeah. Everybody
likes to have a good parade, and we've got many participants this year, just like every year. Pipe bands, dancing bands, floats, Little League, softball. Fire trucks. There's all kinds of stuff.
Well, and it is St. Patrick's. We're starting to get in that mood. You're starting to see corned beef and cabbage for sale at the stores. Yeah. So people are definitely ready for it. It's, again, this Saturday. Get there around 1 o'clock. Get set up. What's new this year?
It's going to be a shorter route.
Okay.
Okay. We're going to be back to the high school. Previous years we were over on Thorn Street, but we're back to the high school. Okay. They're done with a lot of their construction, so it's a lot easier to maneuver and put all our units over at the high school.
How much planning goes into this event?
Months.
Yeah?
Months. Yeah, we've been very blessed with the fire department. We're a very active fire department, but we do have some help. Friends of the St. Patrick's Day Parade have been very helpful and very instrumental on this.
Yeah.
Sponsorships and helping Facebook pages and, it's just all kinds of stuff. There's a lot of work in it.
Do you have trouble, and I don't want to bring up a negative, but this is a common question I ask people. Do you have trouble finding volunteers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
so
just like every department in the state, everywhere you go, volunteers are tough to get. And new this year, thank you for bringing that up, is in years past, we've had our parade in the morning and our dinner at the fire department right after.
Right.
So this year it's going to be a little bit different. Our parade's going to be this Saturday, and then we're going to push off the dinner to the following Saturday.
Which actually is not a bad idea, because that's a long day, not just for you, but for people that are coming to the parade.
Absolutely.
And then to go find parking and do all that again.
Absolutely.
So that's probably, that may work out in your best interest in that scenario.
Yeah.
What should people know about the dinner then, not this Saturday, next Saturday?
Well, it's from 3 to 6, and it's at the Horseheads Fire Department on Main Street. And we also offer takeout as well.
Okay.
So you can call us, order up, and drive around back and pick it up.
Oh, isn't that great?
So yeah.
I kind of like the
fun.
takeout now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of negatives about COVID, but I like the drive-up service. Let me tell you,
not bad.
It makes it a lot easier.
Yep.
Okay, so you joked a little bit earlier about the weather. No one knows what it's going to be. It sounds like it might be all right, but that sounds like jinxing.
We're in the
that.
50s.
Yeah. I know. It's
March.
I know. Yeah, we cannot complain.
No, not bad at all.
Do you think weather really affects something like this all that much?
In previous yeyears, we did cancel one year.
I do remember that.
It snowed.
Yeah, I remember.
For obvious reasons, it was in the 30s and it was freezing.
Yes.
So, a little bit of rain, overcast.
Yeah.
It's a chance for our community to get out and do something outside.
See old friends. We've all been locked up in our house for months.
Yeah, so not too bad.
No, not at all. And you had mentioned earlier sponsorships, and I'm sure everything's kind of set in stone now at this point. But in the future, if someone wants to sponsor the parade or
Yep.
Or volunteer, because you need volunteers in general.
Absolutely.
What's the best way to go about that?
Just reach out to us on Facebook.
Okay.
Call like the Horseheads Fire Department as well, and we really can be accommodate anything.
Of course.
Anybody that wants to help. We do have local service organizations that help us out as well.
Isn't that great?
So.
If you had to guess, how many volunteers you think does it take to run something like this?
More the merrier.
Yeah. Well, yes.
I've never
Not
really
how many
sat
you
down.
want, how many you have.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say roughly 25, 30.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. But it's
Yeah.
a lot of work. What's
Yeah.
your day like that day?
It starts really early with the stage preparation, getting set up in Hanover Square, and getting things set up. So it starts early and goes late.
I'm sure it does. So you're probably relieved that the dinner's the next week, because then
am.
you can actually sit down and enjoy your meal.
I am.
I like it. So what are you looking forward to the most? Right before we go, the tough question. What are you looking forward to the most for the parade?
I'm just looking for just a nice day and just a nice event. I really am.
Well, best of luck with it. I mean,
Thank
like we joked, if you're not ready by now, you'll never be,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But after doing it this many years, you must be pretty
Yeah.
ready for it,
Yeah.
right? So best of luck, and
Thank you.
enjoy the dinner next week, and we'll make sure to keep promoting that throughout the week,
Absolutely.
okay?
I appreciate it.
All right, stay
Thank
with
you.
us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We've got so much to cover. First, I mentioned this comment that we received, and thank you again to Kevin Sullivan for being on the program. I really do appreciate that. That's always a fun event. People really enjoy the Horseheads St. Patrick's parade. A couple quick announcements. Don't forget, next week is the anniversary show. When I say show, it's all week. We're going to have a lot of fun, a lot of guests on the program, just celebration of 1 year on the air here with Frankly Speaking. So that starts on Monday at 7 a.m., of course. Also, on tomorrow's program, we're going to talk to Drenald Bilkari. He is running for Steuben County Circuit Court Judge. So we'll be talking with him at some point in the program tomorrow. Okay, quote. This is, I think I've corrected this because when it translates from voicemail to words, it sometimes gets a little bit wonky. But are you going to talk about how little motivation there was on the Democrat side to go out and vote on Super Tuesday? There was less than half of the amount of Democrats that went out and voted than Republicans, and then also the liberals. The number of people that were voting undecided was major, but at the same time, it was more important of how few Democrats actually went out and voted. I think they're making a major issue. Well, I shouldn't say major issue. They're really, I believe, when I say they, the mainstream media is really focused on the uncommitted votes because they want it to be kind of a warning to the president's campaign apparatus that he better start wavering on his support for Israel. Unfortunately, that's the only reason I can come to why they would focus on that. That's not something they would typically highlight because it was, about 20, 25%, something like that. Yes, it's a big deal, but they could have kind of glanced over it and said, well, there's some protests. It's going to be tough. I know they're saying there could be protests at the State of the Union tonight as well. And he talked about it with Sheriff Allard yesterday, just as a random aside, the protests that could happen during if nothing changes in the Middle East at the Democratic National Convention. But yes, as you know, Nikki Haley has left the campaign. She has suspended her campaign. She said, I wanted Americans to have their voices heard. I've done that. I have no regrets. She did not. I know the media is making a huge deal out of it. She did not endorse former President Trump, basically telling Trump that he has to earn her voters. That was the takeaway. I don't know what the end game is here. I know a lot of people have speculated that she's looking perhaps for a third party. This piece I have from CNN says that some people believe that she's going to start her own kind of wing of the Republican Party. I think that gives her, not to knock her at all, I've said from the beginning, I thought she was a good candidate, good person. I think she's probably the people around her told her some things I think ultimately hurt her for her future prospects. But I don't know if she has that power to start her own wing, kind of a Bush wing of the party, or to build that back up. People who are close with Haley have two different opinions. Some believe that it would be good for her to back Trump because she would be viewed as a team player. Others ardently oppose her endorsing him because that would give Haley the freedom to be critical of Trump and build her own movement. That's what I'm talking about. Those are the people that I think surrounded her that really hurt her in the long run. If she got out before South Carolina, her home state, I think we would not, well, obviously we wouldn't be having this conversation, but there wouldn't be the conversation that we've been having about her future prospects. And I'd love to hear your opinion on it. Now, Trump saying yesterday after securing the nomination, he wants to debate Biden anytime, anywhere, any place. I saw there was some criticism. He says he wants to debate Biden, but refused to debate Republicans in the primary. Was he right about that? I mean, in the long run, he had the poll numbers to show that it wasn't necessary for him to punch down, to use that term. But I thought that was an interesting criticism of him, already kind of dipping their toe in the water of how they can have Biden back out. It is important for the good of our country that Joe Biden and I debate issues that are so vital to America and the American people. Therefore, I'm calling the debates anytime, anywhere, any place. The debates can be run by the corrupt DNC or their subsidiary, the Commission on Presidential Debates. Now, Michael Tyler, communications director for the Biden campaign, responded saying, I know Donald Trump's thirsty for attention and struggling to expand his appeal beyond the MAGA base. And that's a conversation we'll have at the appropriate time in this cycle. But if he's so desperate to see President Biden in prime time, he doesn't have to wait. He can join the tens of millions of Americans who will tune in to watch the State of the Union tomorrow night. Now, what do you think about my thoughts about the bar being set on the State of the Union tonight? The bar being that he doesn't really have to have that great of a performance to be considered one of the greatest speeches. Isn't there always a pundit that says that about a Democrat president? There's always that one pundit that they get on there and they'll say, that is one of the greatest speeches that I've ever seen a president give. So if it's not that great, they're not their follow-up, but the other direction they'll go is, that's probably the best speech I ever saw him give. So if it's not that great, best speech he ever gave. If it's, next level, it's the greatest speech any president has ever given. Now, Bernie Sanders, I guess, had a private meeting with Biden and his people, a roughly hour-long meeting that's been released. Not the transcript hasn't been released, but Sanders has not backed away from what they're saying he said, which is to really, instead of trying to tout what they say they've done, we've done so many great things for this economy, so many great things for you. That's what they've been running on. Sanders is saying, play into the fact that people are hurting. The bubble is extraordinary. Democrats seem to think, many of them, that only if we can explain all of what we've accomplished, people will come on board. But that ignores the pain ordinary people are now experiencing. He has got to lay out a progressive agenda that speaks to the needs of working people and promise, if he has a Democrat majority in the House and Senate, that he will implement that in the first few months of his term. So going more progressive, more populist. That's Bernie Sanders, his suggestion for the president. And I think we may see a little bit of that because for whatever reason, they're focusing on shrinkflation in hopes that you don't understand that shrinkflation is just them essentially admitting that they've caused inflation. We may get to that in just a moment. But yeah, they want him to address his age. They want him to be, well, and again, this goes back to my point of greatest speech I ever saw him give, or one of the greatest speeches. They keep highlighting how great his last State of the Union was. He has to emulate that to show people, see, there's no problems here. How many times do you think he's practiced this speech? Out of curiosity. I mean, don't you think everything is going to be so scripted down to the movements and everything? It's got to be, because they have put a lot of emphasis on this for his future in the campaign. Democrat strategist and communication person Chris Moyer said that more importantly than what Biden says is how he comes across. Will he be sharp and mixing it up like he did with Republicans during last year's State of the Union? A repeat performance would be a home run for him and his campaign. Most voters will remember how they felt watching him. Not necessarily the specific agenda items he shares. That's what will stick. So will he be kind of back and forth? I know we had a piece the other day that said the campaign wants to let Joe be Joe. Now we have a piece that says the Democrats are calling for him to fight harder. That's coming from CNN. Biden's allies are begging him to fight harder. And the State of the Union is his chance to do so. They must feel pretty confident they'll have a fair enough performance because they are, not just the media, but also his campaign, really putting a lot of emphasis on this speech, really hanging their hat on this towards the future coming up on November, Yes, Biden's allies are begging him to fight harder. The State of the Union is his chance to do that. Biden readies for a high-stakes State of the Union amid a tight re-election race. Biden and his team are drafting a speech heavy on economic populism. Well, that's what Bernie Sanders asked for. Bernie says something, they listen, which calls for higher taxes on corporations and the wealthy, an attempt to draw a sharp contrast with Republicans and their likely presidential nominee, Donald Trump. Biden will also push for lowering health care costs and discuss his efforts to go after drug manufacturers to lower the cost of prescription medications, all issues his advisors believe can help buoy what have been sagging economic approval ratings. Sagging economic approval ratings. Yeah, the polls have not been good. Oh, I saw a poll. More bad news for Democrats. There's a poll coming out. This is coming from Vox. If you're not familiar with Vox, far left. Democrats' latest bad poll. 1 in 5 Latino voters consider switching parties. But back to what the president needs to do during his speech. Do you think he'll bring up the student loans? He probably will. Will he attack Trump? Yes, he'll talk about threats to democracy, that there'll be the choice between democracy and chaos. That was a term they've been using a lot lately, because remember, chaos is the word of, well, at least this year and last year, so the word of 2 years, chaos. And that's what we're going to see probably in tonight's speech, in my opinion. We'll hear him. If there's any ad-libs, there'll be pre-rehearsed ad-libs. I'm not saying there'll be plants in the crowd, but I will say that if there's heckling and the like, he will be prepared for it. Dean Obeidallah, who I frequently reference here on the program because I find it so fascinating how important he believes Saturday Night Live to be. He writes for CNN, and he has an opinion piece out that came out yesterday, or just the other day. Lessons Biden can learn from Jon Stewart and Saturday Night Live ahead of his State of the Union speech. And the reason I mention this is because he talks about it's not a stand-up routine, but he's got to be funny, he's got to be punchy, got to be good out there. But I find it interesting that no one has suggested he bring up immigration. They keep telling us, and he may, but they keep telling us that's a winning issue somehow for Democrats, that they're going to make it sound like it's the Republicans to blame for all of this. If you even look, and there's a great piece here, and I can't remember exactly. Oh, there it is. Kristen Fleming. I do have to take a break coming up here in just a little bit, but Kristen Fleming saying the spectacle of the MSNBC trio yucking it up at voters' immigration concerns. I don't know if you've seen this video, but it's one of those, the elites laughing at the people that voted for Trump, which is very interesting because they kept saying that they learned their lesson the first go around. During MSNBC's coverage of Super Tuesday, network anchors Jen Psaki, Joy Reid, and Rachel Maddow cynically made light of Virginia GOP primary voters' concerns, specifically on immigration. Psaki said, I live in Virginia. Immigration was the number one issue. Well, Virginia does have a border with West Virginia, a very contested area, quipped Maddow. Very funny stuff. All three of them laughed. Oh, how they laughed. Never mind that the MS-13 gang has been a menacing presence in that state for years. In recent months, 6 members have been found guilty of various crimes, including murder. I don't want to go through all of the crimes because they get a little gruesome. But they're joined in arms by the Daily Show host, Jon Stewart, who on Monday blatantly distorted the migrant crisis to land a snarky joke about Mayor Adams and his turnaround from sanctuary state standard bearer to saying no more, no more. Adams' reversal, quote, took 2 busloads of Venezuelans, Stewart said, clearly preparing these dispatches from his sprawling $5 million farm in Colts Neck, New Jersey. Yes, the elites are in a bubble. These are not concerns that they have to have. They can laugh at the common people. But taxpayer New Yorkers are the real punchline here. The real figure, up to 600 migrants a day, more than 175,000 so far, being fed and housed on our dime. Illegal immigration is no longer only a partisan issue or one affecting the border states. Now, this is Kristen Fleming, and I would love to hear your take on this because I guess the talking point right now for many in the media is this is the race we did not want as Americans. No one wanted Joe, no one wanted Trump, and I would love to hear your opinion on that. But Trump, this is what Kristen Fleming said. Trump is not my first choice, nor is my second or third. But the less politically motivated indictments created a martyr for the MAGA base. Combine that with the Democrats ignoring festering issues like the border and putting up mumbling, stumbling Joe for a candidate, and Trump looks pretty alluring again. And we had that piece the other day that said there's a nostalgia for Trump that really that Biden and the Democrats created. But you don't have to like him to objectively understand his appeal. He listens to disenfranchised voters. He validates their concerns. while the other side, like we saw on MSNBC and Jon Stewart, belittle them. And we go back to the deplorables comment. We look at the media coverage during 2016. But remember the post-2016 election? When the stunned mainstream media, the legacy media, wondered through clenched teeth how they got it wrong. Well, they never actually wanted to hear the answer. They just loved the sound of their voice so much. Instead of listening, these same elitist laughers will paint Trump voters, regardless of their ethnicity, as unrepentant white supremacists. Reid gave a sneak preview of that Tuesday night, saying, quote, this is Joy Reid, quote, they are voting on race. They are voting on this idea of an invasion of brown people over the border, the idea that they can't get the job that they want, end quote. But as Kristen Fleming said, ignore at your own peril and get those laughs in now while you still can. So when we come back from break, there's just a lot of interesting pieces out there weighing in on the presidential race, weighing in on what the president should do in tonight's State of the Union. What do you see in tonight's State of the Union? What would you predict? I don't like making predictions on this program, but you can, like I said, you can understand what the media is going to say already. They have set the bar high for his campaign, but the bar is set so low for a somewhat coherent speech that it's not going to take much for them to declare this a victory. So prepare for that. As you watch it tonight, prepare for the media coverage, not here, but the media coverage elsewhere to talk about what a great speech it was, unless something very disastrous happens. So let's take another break, and then we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. This is Frankly Speaking from a viewer here. Quote, do you think any of the people that say they won't vote for Trump realize that if you have Republican values, not voting is actually a vote for the Democrats' agenda? Yes, I do. That's why I do think that, remember, it was a primary campaign. So there's a lot of people that tell the pollsters or tell whoever, I'm not voting for Trump. So I'm only going to vote for Nikki Haley. I'm only going to vote for whoever, DeSantis, whoever it was at that point. And then the media is running with this saying, boy, there's a lot of people that voted for Nikki Haley. Those people aren't going to go for Trump. What's to say they're not going to vote for Trump? That's what I've been kind of stuck on for the last couple weeks or maybe months. That why, I know they say that, but why is that the case? I mean, I think we've all voted in a primary where maybe we had a different candidate that we liked that ultimately won. But at the end of the day, when the smoke cleared, you voted for the R or the D, whoever you support. So, yeah, I do think a lot of these people, it's bluster. It's the same people, and the articles are starting already, which I think you'll get a kick out of, which is people are going to leave the country in droves if Trump wins. It's that same kind of thing. It's that kind of cliche argument that, well, if they voted for Nikki Haley, they're not going to vote for Trump. If Trump wins, he's going to, everybody's going to leave the country. It's kind of hack political reporting that we've all become used to. But I don't buy the concept that anybody that voted for Nikki Haley is not going to vote for Trump at the end of the day, or whoever the Republican nominee is. Case in point, Mitch McConnell saying yesterday that he endorsed Trump because he's the Republican that won. So yes, there will be some outliers, but look, according to CNN, the polls that we had yesterday, what was it? 85% of the people that voted for Nikki Haley during Super Tuesday said that they thought the job that Joe Biden was doing was fine. So those weren't going to be Trump voters anyway. I don't think if Nikki Haley would have got the nomination, these people that voted for her would have voted for her in the droves like they claim. The numbers show that she would beat Biden. Well, there's a lot of misinformation out there on these numbers. There's also, let's face it, Nikki Haley. I'm not trying to kick someone when they're down. She suspended her campaign, but let's just be honest about it. There's a lot of Democrats and left-leaning independents that voted for her, that supported her. That's fine, but were they, at the end of the day, no matter what happened, going to vote for her if she were the nominee? No matter what they told polls, I don't believe so. So yes, I hope and I pray that people realize, and I think about this a lot on local elections and like that people realize either not voting or voting for a third party or whatever the case may be is a vote that is going by the wayside and is a vote for whatever the opposition is to you. So if you're Republican and you don't vote or you vote for third party, you're voting Democrat essentially, and vice versa. If you're Democrat, you get it. So thank you for that. We have so many comments coming in. Sorry, I shouldn't try to read them live on the air. I just don't have that capability. So we go back to, Press Secretary Jean-Pierre said, we've been saying people will feel Biden's policies for years, remember? Well, I think they meant in a positive way. But we'll be feeling Biden's policies for years, but it just takes time. That's interesting. Jeff Bennett from PBS NewsHour said, hasn't the president been saying that for the better part of 3 years that once the American people start to feel the impact of these policies, once the American people start to feel these shovel-ready infrastructure projects begin, then they'll fully understand the impact of the work that I've been doing. That's what Biden's saying. He's been saying that for years. Why hasn't this shifted? Now, you and I would say because we go to the grocery store, we don't see these shovel-ready products. We see a lot of media bluster. But anyway, Jean-Pierre answered, and I understand that. But I also understand, and we also understand, that it takes time, right? You asked me what the president's going to say, and what's he going to do tomorrow, meaning the State of the Union. He's going to lay this out. He's going to lay out the achievements that he's done in the last 3 years. So it takes time. Well, one thing, according to James Bulvard, when we come back, is Joe Biden's State of the Union is going to be about shrinkflation in many ways. Has the Biden re-election campaign finally found its silver bullet? Biden is expected to vigorously denounce corporate greed in the State of the Union. The White House apparently believes that scapegoating corporate executives will magically redeem the reputation of Bidenomics. Isn't that what's fascinating about shrinkflation? Is admitting that Bidenomics has led to inflation. So what they're suggesting is you go and buy that bag of chips, and it's got half of what it did, a month ago. That's just greedy corporations taking more money from you, trying to trick you. It's not the fact that that's how they keep it at the price point that you can pay. Shrinkflation, charging the same price for a smaller product, is Team Biden's great hope. Politico reported, quote, the White House has been aggressively testing out the shrinkflation messaging on the airwaves and internal polling ahead of Biden's speech. We'll tell you a little bit more about that. Can't run late because this is our last break. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking. We are back with Frankly Speaking. Just quickly, we were talking about shrinkflation, and the president was furious when he found out that there's less cookies and there's less chips in the packaging. He condemned corporations for charging folks more and more for less and less. And I love this line in this piece by James Bovard. But unlike governments that force people to pay more taxes for worse services, corporations cannot conscript their victims. Does Biden believe smaller cookies prove the need for bigger federal government? In his 1928 presidential campaign, Herbert Hoover supposedly promised a chicken in every pot. But will Biden anchor his re-election campaign on America's entitlement to cookies the size of airplane floating devices? Shrinkflation and many other problems are the bitter harvest of Bidenomics. But no matter how many wrenches Biden has thrown into the nation's economy since January of 2021, he considers himself blameless for all the disruptions and dislocations he has sowed. In his Super Bowl ad denouncing shrinkflation, Biden declared, quote, the American public is tired of being played for suckers. So Team Biden decided to treat people like village idiots instead. Will the biggest shrinkflation of 2024 be Biden's vote count in November? Quickly, do you buy into this? America is stuck with the Biden-Trump rematch. It abhors. This time, let's have a real debate. And this is talking about how the last go-around was during COVID. Let's actually have the conversation and not just the really attacks constantly on Trump and the building up of Biden, who was very quiet and in the cliche in the basement. Now, Democrats are ready to hit the panic button in the Trump-Biden race, according to the Hill's Alexander Bolton. I found it really interesting. Basically, this whole piece is about how Trump's doing better in the polls than they expected because they never learned their lesson, but how dependent they were on the courts. Think about that. They were considering the courts their lifeblood. That's how they were going to get through this. That's how little they trust in Biden. Isn't that kind of fascinating? It's about 4 pages, and I would say that is the majority of people upset with the courts. I also thought that this is something to tie in with a conversation we had numerous times on the program. One insider said, in retrospect, it would have been a good idea to do the Super Bowl interview, throw a few deep passes into the end zone. And also said that even though economic indicators are solid, but people are feeling some anxiety about making ends meet when they pay the grocery bills. But no, I like that. The indicators are solid, but people are suffering. But going back to that point, in retrospect, it would have been a good idea to do the Super Bowl. We said at the time, who Retrospect is the wrong word. No one thought that should be a bad idea. It actually raised more concerns about President Biden's fitness and the fact that he didn't take that softball interview. We are out of time. Man, I wanted to bring this up for the last 2 days. We have no time, but how the woke VA, did you see that? The VA was banning the iconic World War II kiss photo, the VJ Day photo with the soldier kissing the nurse because it doesn't share their values. Well, they reversed it because basically they got caught. People are saying, no, this was never approved. We had no idea. The VA Secretary, Dennis McDonald, said, no. We had no idea that we were going to ban this photo. Employees have expressed discomfort with the display of this photograph, and to foster a more trauma-informed environment, it should be removed. Doing so reflects our dedication to creating a respectful and safe workplace, and is in keeping with our broader efforts to promote a culture of inclusivity and awareness. So now they reversed it because, it got caught red-handed with this kind of woke culture. Not that iconic photo, not something you want to go after. Really just showing the glee and happiness when the war was over. But anyway, out of time. That was a fun episode of Frankly Speaking. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Thank you to Kevin Sullivan for being our guest for the Horseheads St. Patrick's Parade this Saturday. We will see you tomorrow morning starting at 7 a.m. with Frankly Speaking.